in my community, in Trinidad. And it's something that I've never liked. I know it's not Islamic. And it exists in our community. When I go to the mosque in Trinidad, you know, the black Muslims, they have their own mosque. And the Indian Muslims, they have their own mosque. I think about partition in India. I wasn't there, but I've read about the history of how many Hindus and Muslims died because of this creation of Pakistan and India. And how many of us as Muslims do, when we drive down Main Street, do we look at indigenous people on Main Street, and do we have that respect for them? I hope so. When we see someone in our community who has a mental health issue, I'm a psychologist by training, do we embrace them or do we shun them? And I think about mental health, like when we put other people down, are we engaged in hate within our own community? What kind of an impact does that have on the mental health of others? And ultimately, what kind of impact does it have on us and our own mental health in the long run? So, that's what I'm saying.
Very good point. And I think we have, every community, whether it's religious or ethnic, has issues of racism and considering other people less, you know. I'll give you two examples. One, when I write defending Muslims or about Islamophobia or about national security, I got all these Islamophobes and some people attacking me. And when I write criticizing Muslim world, Muslims will write to me attacking me. So the last piece I wrote about Saudi Arabia, saying, look, Saudi Arabia, they don't allow religious freedom. This needs to be spoken out against. You know, they're restrictive on women. People who love the other stuff I write, they criticize me. I said, you have to be principled. Doesn't matter who's doing this. You know, but they attack me. They actually attack me. Why are you paying attention on Saudi Arabia? Because they're racist. They're discriminating against. Look, we come in. You know, we came into these countries. I teach at a Christian university. The university president meets with me to make sure that the students have a prayer hall. Okay? I said, of course I'm going to criticize them in Saudi Arabia. They have to practice in private. And if they caught practicing Christianity, they're put in jail and they're beaten. I said, I'm going to speak out against that. Right? Because if I don't speak out, I can't say, criticize stuff here. And then I'll give you another example. My sister went to teach in Qatar. And so she landed there. When she landed there, the entire family, in Pakistan, all the entire clan will show up at the airport. So dozens of people there to receive them. They go home, and then one of my relatives tells my sister, says, he must be so shocked because her husband, my sister's husband, is a French-Canadian convert, white guy. So he must be shocked. Why? Because he must think your family loves you so much. The white people, they're all individualistic, right? So my sister says, no. When we go to Quebec, like the whole clan is there, but they have this belief that white people are just individualistic. This is racism. So the same idea that we have about, so my sister had to educate, no, like we go there, we go to their cottage, you know, their family loves them and they're just like family, just like, why do you think? Why would you assume that? This is like kind of like kufarophobia or something, right? Or you know, phobia of other people, right? So this is there, we need to call that out. And when we call that out, people should be criticized because it's about principle. Islam for me is about being principled. The Quran says, speak out for justice, whether it be for you or against you. So you don't see, I'm going to defend my people when they discriminate, because that's not Islam.
Now, I should mention that we got some questions submitted on Facebook, and all 6 of them you've answered already, without any of them ever being posed. But we have, I think, one more question from the room here. Former CBC broadcaster, taught me everything I know, Leslie Hughes.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for the wonderful conversation. Thank you both for a wonderful conversation tonight. I think we all intuitively understand and support what you're saying when you talk about the fear. And I think much of that fear can be laid directly at the feet of media. It's a shameful state. It's shameful, nothing less than that. But the point is, I'm curious to know, for example, 9 out of 10 Canadians would say, as Terry said earlier tonight, a fatwa, oh, that's a death threat. So I am illiterate when it comes to Islam. Whereas you have pointed out, and again, thank you, that this is a legal process or decision. So what kind of a plan, how aggressive are you being or could you be to bring the media to the point of objectivity with respect to Islam? I think that is crucial.
I think there's a lot of work happening now with Muslims getting involved in the media, right? I think that's very important that Muslims have to engage, get involved in the media. Not only in the media, I think they need to get involved. People call me because I'm a big critic of CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence. You know, I always attack them, write articles. In fact, when they interview people in my office, they say, are we going to read about this in the paper? Well, if you do something wrong, you will, because I'll write an op-ed about it. So I tell people, call me, should I join CSIS? Of course, you're Canadian, okay? And we need Muslims in there to help educate, to give a perspective, because otherwise somebody else is going to say, this is what Muslims are, this is what Islam is, right? Because I believe that CSIS at the end of the day should be protecting us. I want them to make sure that there's no terrorist attack as well.
You mean CSIS, the Canadian Security Intelligence?
RCMP.
Okay.
You know, Muslims have to be involved in everything and show that we're concerned about everything, just like other Canadians. And the media, you know, there's a lot more Muslims who are getting involved in the media. So a lot more, I think even your job is not taken by...
It was announced last week in IUKY, the new host of the weekend morning show, My Old Job. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and there's people in the media who now know who to call. So for instance, I know because some people like that are in the media, they'll say, you know what, why are Muslims only being called to talk about Islam or terrorism or jihad or something about the Middle East? Call Muslims to talk about, you know, childcare. You want to comment about this, so they'll see Muhammad blah 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 speaking about things that are not related to Islam. Then you humanize Muslims, right? So that media has to do that. And to give
that was like a challenge for you. You grew up in Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto. Which hockey team do you cheer for?
Montreal Canadiens. I was a big Canadian fan. Guy Lafleur was back then. You know, I love him. So the idea is that we are getting educated. We're getting institutions. For the longest time, Muslims in Canada were on the bricks and mortar projects, just building mosques. And I'm a big critic of this because in Toronto, for example, we've got over 100 mosques. And sometimes with these big, mammoth, $1 million structures with just 5 people there. I said that money needs to go to institutions. You need to put it into institutions for the Muslim community and for Canadian society. You know, the lawyer, when he hired me, he said, look how we are today. Well, how did they get there? They were persecuted, they were oppressed. Then now, the big hospitals in Toronto, Mount Sinai, Jewish General, blah, blah. You see, they did this openly, claiming their identity. And so, this is what Muslims need to do. We need to start building institutions. Media is one of them, but as well as in other areas to say, look, we're Muslims and we do this. This is what our religion teaches, to engage. And I think it's happening. I don't want to sound pessimistic. I'm actually very optimistic because I believe in the goodness of most people. Once they know, I've been speaking regularly. Like just last week I spoke at a church in Waverley, Indiana, which is Penn's country. Okay? So I was invited there. They say that usually 10, 15 people show up for this event. When they found out the speaker was coming about Islam, about 125 people showed up. It was packed. I was like, wow, this is impressive. And the program was supposed to go from 6 to 7. It went from 6 to 9:30 because people had so many questions. And then, you know, because they're genuine people, they want to know, they want to understand. And I said, I think we made, the person said, you know, I think we made 125 ambassadors. That's what we need to do. So that when somebody attacks or says something generalized about Muslims, they'll say, no, that's not true. And you know, my Islamic law students are so interested. You know, I tell my wife, I think, actually, this is my mission. That God gave me a mission. Why I ended up in Valparaiso, Indiana. Because I showed her a post when somebody was attacking Islam. One of my students, who took my Islamic law class, an ex-Marine, he posed a big rebuttal and says, Professor Kutty taught me all these things. Here's what he would say, blah, blah, blah. I was like, wow. If I say it, some people might dismiss it. He's just an apologist. But when this former U.S. Marine lawyer now says, this is what it is, this is BS, you know, that's what our job is, to educate people so that they go and do that work for you. And I think we're doing it, we're getting there. I'm very positive about that, optimistic.
Oh, sorry, I said last question, but I think we still have some more. You have a mic. Go right ahead.
All right, so my question is, unlike previous historical examples of cultural racism and xenophobia, which were often marked by like strict, discriminatory, and concise government policies, for example, like in Western Germany with the Jews, and in Canada too, and with the Chinese and the Japanese in North America, Islamophobia is different in the sense that there are not the same. Like, we are not made to wear stars that show that we are Muslims. We are not restricted from entering public events or public places. So how can like the success of dialogues like this really be measured? How do we measure the success of talking about why we need to get rid of Islamophobia in North America and in the larger world as a whole?
So your point is valid. It's more insidious. It's not like open as much, right? It's getting into the institutions. It's getting into people's ideas. So that's why I think it's important for us to have institutions to tackle this and to get involved in these societies, involved in these institutions, right? And I think it's successful. Let me give you an example. There were statistics released. Washington Post published some statistics, which I had to actually take it a couple of times, look at it a couple of times, and then when I wrote an op-ed for the Toronto Star, I actually cited it. And the editor was ready to hit print, and then he called me and said, wait, are you sure about this figure? So I said, hey, it's reported in the Washington Post. Maybe you want to just link it to the Washington Post, because he was afraid to publish this. What it was right after Trump, when Trump was campaigning, 50%, I think, 50% of Americans had a positive view of Muslims. Not Islam, Muslims. Positive view of Islam is less. Okay, but Muslims, they may know Muslims, not all Muslims are terrorists, you know, so 50%. But after he won, okay, a few months later, the percentage of favorable rating of Muslims was 70% according to this poll. How did that happen? Because that's what I said, the inherent goodness of people. They saw that this guy was targeting Muslims, okay? And they reacted. I had some neighbors who actually, when I did cross the border, I know they were Republicans. They had Trump signs and everything, okay? But when they found out, because I was coming every week, every 2 weeks to Toronto, and I stopped. When he got elected, I was scared. They're going to stop me at the border. Remember all the thing in the media? So I was like, oh, you know what, I'm not going to go. So I didn't go. So he came up to me, hey, what happened? Why didn't you go? He goes, oh, you know what, all this craziness about it. So he was like, oh, this is unfortunate. And like, this is a Trump supporter. This is unfortunate. They shouldn't be doing this. Because he knows I'm a good neighbor, right? He knows me, and he knows I'm openly Muslim. Okay? And in fact, let me give you this example, not to show how I'm such a good guy, but this is a simple example. So this guy, who's like a, you know, Trump supporter and all this stuff, the reason he had a positive image of me is he interacted with me, but also one time he hit my car, right? He hit my car. And my wife was there. He said, oh, you know what? I didn't see your car. It's a low car. And he hit it. I said, you know, I shouldn't have parked it here either because I parked in the wrong place. I said, you know, don't worry. He said, no, I'm going to fix it. I said, no, in my religion, okay, I'm taught to treat my neighbor like he was my family. I said that. I purposely said that. So what do you mean? He said, you know, I'm taught that. So he looks at his wife and he's like, okay. But you know the weird thing about it is my wife said, why did you say that to me? I said, because I wanted to know I'm Muslim and I'm practicing my religion. Okay? You know the hadith about treating of neighbors, that when the companions were talking to the Prophet, and the Prophet was saying all these rights that your neighbors had, that the companions said, stop him. Because if you let the Prophet continue talking, he might say that your neighbor's going to inherit from you. And I don't want him to say that, so stop him. Right? So for me, but you know how this is dawah in action. Because about 2-3 months later, I get invited to speak at a church, another church, a Catholic church. And guess who's sitting there and who'd already told the entire crowd of 150 people that the speaker is my neighbor And I hit his car, and he said it is religion. So when I went there, everybody was so receptive to me. I'm like, what is this? Like, did he prep them up? So I wasn't just speaking, preaching, right? They had already converted the entire, they loved me. Right? So I'm saying, you know, this is amazing Muslim, right? So that's why I say, wear your Islam on your sleeve now, because Daesh is doing such a job of projecting this negative. We need to do this, right? So that's how you attack this insidiousness. That look, these are Muslims, and they're just decent people, and we want to have Muslim neighbors. Because if I hit their car, he's not going to take money from me, right? I'm just joking with the last part, but so who paid for it? I paid for a car. I paid for it. So my wife said, "Why would you pay for it?" I said, "You know what? This is charity." Right? It's really charity, because for me, I said this is an amazing investment for me.
Can you move on to my street?
Sorry?
Can you move on to my street?
He's working.
Was there another question, or are we good? Okay, so there's a man on the mic. Go right ahead.
Yes, first of all, let me thank you for the comments, the discussion, and the previous presentation with Dr. Khan. I think they were both excellent this evening. And I heard a lot of questions and comments about what the Muslim community needs to do to combat Islamophobia. And of course, I appreciate the issues around education and so on. But I guess I want to also say that it's a two-way street, I think, and there are obligations on the non-Muslim community with respect to combating Islamophobia, and that, you know, to use a parallel here, we talk much about reconciliation between the indigenous and the non-indigenous communities, and the obligations that exist on both parties for doing that. So I guess my question is, do you have any couple of suggestions for the non-Muslim community about what they need to do to help combat Islamophobia?
That's a very good question. I actually wrote an article. It's called Lessons from Islamophobia from the Past and the Christian Response. This is maybe Christians, but it could apply to Jews and other religious groups. But the first Islamophobe, the term wasn't used, were actually the Quraysh at the time of the
There's the article, by the way, if you want to see it. I printed a copy of it.
Yes, Islamic Monthly. So basically, the first Islamophobes were actually the Quraysh who were persecuting the Prophet. Why? Because they said, you know what, this man comes and he's changing our values. And then they started demonizing them. They persecuted them, the Quraysh. So guess what the Prophet did? He was not being persecuted as much initially because he was part of the same tribe. And he had some protection, some immunity. But his followers were being persecuted. So he told some of them, go to this land where there's this Christian king. He's going to treat you very, fairly, because their book teaches them this. So these refugees, asylum seekers, ran to Abyssinia. And the king Nagashi there, the Christian king, took them in. And of course the Quraysh sent a delegation to chase after him, after these companions. And showed up there and said, there's a bunch of rebels who want to change our society. They disrespect our old ways, and they also disrespect your ways, and they come for asylum here. Here's some amazing gifts for you, send them back with us. So the king did what every decent person should do. He said, I'm going to give these people an audience. I want to hear what they have to say. I'm not going to listen to the Islamophobes. I'm going to let the Muslims speak for themselves. And the Muslims had appointed Ja'far, who was a cousin of the Prophet, to be their spokesperson. And he stood up. So as soon as the king walked in, everybody stood up. The Muslims remained seated. So the Islamophobes said, hey, see, they don't even respect you. Everybody's standing up. These Muslims are crazy. They don't even respect you. So the king's open mind said, shut up, sit down. I want to hear from him. So Ja'far, why would you stand for me? Ja'far said, we were, barbaric people. We didn't have any civility to us. We mistreated people. And God sent us this man who taught us that we only stand up for God. Okay? And he taught us to treat our neighbors right. He told us to take care of the oppressed, blah, blah. He explained Islam. And then the Islamophobic Chinese said, no, but he thinks very badly of your religion. So he asked Jafar again, he said, no. He recited from the Quran, Surah Mary. There is no surah called Muhammad. There is a surah, chapter called Mary. So he recited from Mary, and about the virgin birth, and about how Mary said, how can I have a baby? And people are going to disrespect me and think I'm a violent, bad woman and all that. Said, no, point to this baby will defend you. So all the stories, so the king heard this and started crying. And he turned to the Islamophobes, I'm not going to send these people back, I'm going to protect these people. Right? So what's the lesson from that? The king was open-minded, and he didn't listen to the Islamophobes. He let the Muslims, the majority of Muslims, speak for what they stand for. This is what I'm doing, this is what Muslims are doing. The 1.6 billion Muslims hate Daesh, hate terrorism. Why? For a selfish reason. Because the number one victims, according to Interpol, according to most law enforcement, depending on whose figures you accept, between 92 to 96% of the victims of Daesh and terrorists are who? Muslims. So to anybody who says Muslims love terrorists, it is irrational. You have some kind of irrationality, because there's no way I'm going to defend people who are killing, whose victims are 96% Muslims. Right? So the king, that's what people should do. They should be open-minded to listen to your Muslim. What are they saying? We have no hidden agenda here to say, look, we're Muslim, this is what our religion teaches. Don't listen to what Daesh says, because you don't listen to when, crazy Christians, the KKK, or apartheid in South Africa was defended in the name of Christianity. If you Google apartheid and Christianity, during the 70s and 60s, we conferences, how the place of apartheid and Christianity. But I don't think all Christians are not responsible. All Christians practice apartheid, right? Because the majority of Christians won't accept this. But that particular group did. So keep an open mind and listen to your Muslim and speak up for us. Because if you speak up, people will listen. When I'm speaking, I'm just not a Muslim apologist. But you know what? When non-Muslims speak up, I think it's a powerful message. That's why Muslims get amazing. They get so excited when a non-Muslim is defending Muslims. Oh, finally, I don't have to do something else. Get out of me. Right? So I think that lesson from that Christian king is today as important for all groups. Keep an open mind, right? And listen and dialogue with the people the majority of you.
If you want to know more about Islam and you're not Muslim, there is a class that's been offered here at the Mosque for, I'm into week 8 of it on Saturday mornings from 10 until noon, and it is a 12-week course, which is called But there's all kinds of really, for me, elementary stuff, lots of conversation, lots of chance to challenge the instructor to ask stupid questions and get them answered. It's been incredibly helpful, and when I was preparing to talk to you, I went on to iTunes and just entered the word Islam in the search engine and found these fantastic conversations. In fact, one of your friends, Hussein, wrote a book called Islam in America, and he was interviewed for this hour-long conversation. That's where I learned about Thomas Jefferson getting his copy of the Quran. So there's lots of really useful material there. Try it yourself. Google Islam when you're on iTunes, and there's really useful material there that can be part of the education for all of us who are not educated in the Islamic faith.
Yes. One thing I would just say, just be careful when you're Googling, because Islamophobes know how to maximize the hits, right? Because they're paying money to make sure. So at one point I remember, until my IT guy got involved, if you Google my name, it was a terrorist supporter, okay? And there's pages and pages written. If I read it, I'm like, I was scared for me. Really? I told my wife, man, people read this, they're gonna get scared, right? And my IT guy then did all kinds of stuff, so now my website or my university comes. But I have to pay money. Why do I have to spend money to give a proper nuanced thing of me? Right? So my IT guy said, you have to take all your articles, archive it, get a website so it comes there, rather than go to there, because, otherwise it takes you to all this garbage that they post. So be careful with that. Secondly, go with a lot of the academic sources. There's lots of non-Muslim academics. If you think Muslims are biased, okay, you could go to non-Muslim academics who will give you an objective assessment. They'll give you it'll be completely different from what the Islamophobes focus on, right? And the definitions they use, all that stuff. So that's just one caution.
Yeah, and that's a good caution, because I'm looking at one of your articles that was published in the Toronto Star, and then there's all these people piling on saying really salacious things about you. My source was on iTunes, and these were centers for Islamic studies.
Yes.
That seem to be more credible, at least from my assessment of it as a journalist. I know we can talk for a very long time. What was the number? Okay. This will be the last question, not because I want to cut it off, but only because it's coming up to 9 o'clock.
All right, I'll be short. Thank you very much again for allowing me the opportunity to speak. This is not a question, this is a comment. Regarding the brother's question here, what can we do more? And you said that we're doing everything that we can, and I respectfully disagree. I'm a second-year law student. Second-year law student, can you hear me? Okay, sorry about that. And in my class, we're about 8 people, and I estimate there is maybe 10-15% from the gay homosexual community. All these people, they sign up because they want to advocate for their community. And we have a problem that seems to have immigrated with us, is that I believe in 1834, the Sultan Abdul-Majid from the Ottoman Empire had retired the ulama, which are the legal scholars, Sharia legal scholars, because he thought that he wants to introduce the Tanzimat, new legal system. This brought down the status of the learned legal scholars across the Middle East and the Muslim community. I'm originally from Jordan. When I took the high school exam, the people that got, in the upper 10th percentile, like 99%, 98%, and so on, all these people wanted to go to which school? Take a guess. Medical school. And in our community here, everybody who, is of some level of intelligence wants to go to medical school. None of our community really looks up to law school. And we're really underrepresented in that field, I believe. So here's an invitation, because we're labeled that we don't respect women and we mistreat them. And sometimes if I wanted to speak up, I'm a guy, I'm a man. If I wanted to speak up and say, no, we do not mistreat women, it's going to look like it's tainted, it's self-serving, and it would really help if the hijab-wearing Muslim women were to apply to law school to advocate on behalf of our community. If you are interested, I am willing to pay for your outside tuition fee and give you the books and set you on your way. I'll be here a little afterwards. You can come talk to me. Thank you very much.
If I can just add a comment, I agree with you 100%. We need to get into either. The answer I said was we're doing enough in terms of condemning terrorism, right? That was the only thing. But you're right, we need people in social sciences, we need people in journalism, we need people in law. It's very important. Even Islamic studies, to engage at these levels, right? Because as you said, it's either medicine or engineering. Even when I went to law school, my dad was very supportive. But everyone else, they said, why did you do that? Why did you go to medicine? Why did you go to medicine? Why did you go to medicine? Right? That's what I was told. But I decided to go to law, and my father was very supportive. He said, we need lawyers. Right? So you're right, yeah. That's true. In a lot of our culture, they will, especially for instance in Okay? The lawyers look down like this. But when they come here, they go, whoa, lawyers have a lot of clout here. But over there, forget it. They actually say you're a liar. Right? I get queries from people who want to go to law school. They say, hey, will I have to lie a lot? I don't want to be a lawyer because I have to lie a lot. Which is not, that's not, you're an officer of the court. You should not be lying. Do some lawyers lie? Of course they do. Do some doctors cheat and lie? Of course they do. It's across every profession, right? But, but I appreciate your comment.
Well, thank you all for coming out. Thank you. I feel so fortunate to spend this time with you. You've shone light onto so many areas that all of us have been curious about. Thank you, and thank you for your determination.
Thank you very much.